From Wacko Chaco Studio, I am Ashwin Chaco, and this is The Fruitful Life, a show about the business of creativity and the stories behind the creators that have made their dreams a reality. Hey folks, welcome to The Fruitful Life, award-winning illustrator Tim Easley. Hi Tim.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, good. Thank you so much for joining me.
So, thanks for asking me.
Yeah. Um, to get started, please introduce yourself, tell us who you are and what you do.
I'm Tim Easley. I'm an illustrator and a designer and do some other bits. There's probably not a lot to say there. Yeah, people know what an illustrator is, don't they? So, yeah,
Yeah. Keep it simple, keep it
yeah,
straightforward. So, like, one question I like to ask all my guests before we really dig into who you are and all the different things that you do is if you were a fruit, what fruit would you be and why?
Oh man, that's really hard.
Take
And
your
the only
time.
fruit I can take, and so now you put me on the spot. The only fruit I can think of is a strawberry. So we're gonna say strawberry.
Okay,
I
strawberry.
don't think I really look like a strawberry, but I guess that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. What do other people say? Do I have like a better answer?
No, everybody has their own, like, like whatever sort of fruit kind of pops into their head. And I use that to basically design the cover for the podcast. So
So I'm going to be a strawberry.
yeah.
That's all right. That's fine. That works for me.
Okay, awesome. So you tell me a little bit about yourself as a kid, like were you creative? Did you draw a lot? Like what drew you down the path you're on today?
I did draw a little bit when I was a kid. I do remember
Mm,
drawing. I don't have like loads of memories of when I was a kid. I didn't go into this at all. Like I was quite good at school. Like when I went to college, I started off studying like computer science, double maths, and physics. So I didn't really go towards the creative side. Um, I ended up like opening a record shop and having to do like a load of design and stuff for that. Like, so that kind of pushed me that direction a little bit. And then I couldn't get work like 15 years ago, so I decided to go freelance. So it's not on purpose.
yeah.
Like it's always into like drawing and stuff, but like yeah, it wasn't on purpose. Just sort of fell into it a little bit.
That's interesting. What got you started on the record store? You just loved music and you wanted to start your own business? Like
I,
that's
I don't really remember. I think I wanted to like start a business. I was
yeah,
gonna open like a game shop, like selling like video games and stuff, but the bank wouldn't give me any money.
right.
And I've decided to go for like a record store. I don't really even know why. Just thought like I like music, I'll go for a record store, and then yeah,
And then you started designing things for your record store to like advertise
yeah.
like
So this,
events and stuff like that, or
well, yeah, this was like a long time ago. So I had to do like the logo for it and the flyers and like the website and all that kind of stuff. So I ended up kind of going into design a bit more, and then from that doing illustration, and now I'm mostly doing illustration.
okay,
Yeah,
awesome. So like you have the most amazing toy collection. I can see it behind you. I've been curious, like waiting to ask you about it. Tell me about like how you got started and sort of what role it plays in influencing your art, because I can see some of the
there's a lot of crap
yeah, the Amos characters, I think it was, and then
yeah. I've got a
like
load of those.
the Chinatown market stuff and some other stuff. Yeah. Tell
Yeah,
me a
I've been
little bit.
collecting for like ages and ages, like a couple of decades or so. And also it builds up like you do like a lot of designers and illustrators doing like chuck a couple of things on your desk
Mm.
or a couple of shelves. You've got like 3 books or something, and you buy like one toy to put next to them. You got this tiny little collection, and then you keep going. And then when you've been collecting for a while, it ends up like looking and you're
But
like, I
but
don't really
like
know what to
what
do with it.
started it? Was there a specific character that you're like, oh, that's amazing, and that was like the kickstart of your collection? There was a
Um,
specific story that you were fascinated by,
I don't really
or
remember so much. Like I grew up in the 80s. Like I was born very slightly before the 80s, but like I grew up in the 80s. So there was a lot of like cartoons and like character toys and stuff in the 80s, wasn't there?
yeah.
So I've got like that. I don't have anything from my childhood. It all got thrown away like a long time ago. But like I've gradually bought things that I liked when I was a kid, and like you say, like the James Jarvis,
Yeah,
like designer toys they call them, I think.
yeah.
Yeah, and it just keeps growing from that, I think. And then the more stuff you get, the more stuff you want, and then you end up with all this sort of thing. I did have like a lot of it in boxes and everything, but then I was kind of like, I'd rather have three big shelving. Like that's not even all of it. There's loads more, but like it makes for like a good background, and when I'm working, it's something to look at. I think it influences my work quite a lot, so
Mm,
it's good to look through rather than like looking through a book.
yeah.
I get like color ideas and shapes and stuff. You can look at your shelves and
That's cool. So it's like almost a nostalgia factor, and then it also works as like an inspiration factor. Like
yeah, yeah.
you're stuck. Let me just play with my toys for a little bit.
Yeah.
You get
Like,
inspired and
because
start
I
drawing.
think like everyone, like if you look back at your childhood, you can
Yeah.
think like cartoons or toys or stuff that influence you. And like if I think of mine, there's like the James Jarvis stuff is a lot of the cartoons from the 80s, like Garfield and things,
Yeah.
big round eyes and like bright colors and stuff. So yeah, if you think of that stuff, it kind of influences what you're doing now. And then yeah, I just ended up buying it all because I just like looking at it. So.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of hype culture and the toys that this all came from, I read that you spent time in Tokyo, and then so I'm curious about like how living in Tokyo, having that multicultural aspect of being British but living in the East, and then also being into hype culture as it's called now, but it was just probably culture back then.
Yeah.
What sort of influences did that play in your art? Like are there any stories around that?
I wasn't there for like a long time. I'd visited
Mm,
lots of times. I used to go there and fund my trips. I used to stay at like a really, really cheap place. I think it was like £15 a night or something. The type where you get like a bed and a small space for your suitcase and you have to share bathrooms and that kind of stuff.
yeah.
So I used to like wait until there was like cheap airfare and go out there and like buy a load of stuff to bring it back here and sell it to kind of fund my trip going out there. But yeah, I was there for like a year or so when I was living there. And like yeah, it's interesting. It's weird. It's kind of there's a lot more tourists there now. There wasn't so many when I was there, so it was a bit.
Mm,
There was a lot of like pointing because people haven't seen like non-Japanese people too much back then, like
yeah.
even in Tokyo. Yeah, it was really interesting. It was like really futuristic then.
Mm.
I think we've caught up a lot over here now. Um, but yeah, it was good. There was a lot of toys and all sorts there to have a look at, exhibitions and stuff that I guess you wouldn't really see over here.
And so were you into sneakers and stuff like that as well? Were you a
Yeah,
sneakerhead
yeah,
and like the fashion of that time? I mean, now as well, more than
yeah,
ever,
yeah. I was
I
buying a lot of
suppose.
sneakers back there still as well. Yeah, because I founded like a big sneaker website like in 2000-ish, so
Okay.
that was kind of around that sort of time. So
Yeah.
that was back when yeah you'd be able to go to like Tokyo or New York or something and buy some shoes that you'd bring back and like no one had seen before. Like now nobody cares because there's like 6 million different pairs. I don't
Yeah.
think anyone's impressed by it. I think no one knows where you got it from. Like if you got something interesting, it could have just come from JD Sports or something. Like no one cares. But
Well,
yeah,
unless you get those like super rare ones like on
yeah,
StockX
yeah,
or But that's it. That's interesting. Like and so like was there some of the cultural nuances that you put into your work from those experiences, do you think? What about your
yeah.
color palette? Is that influenced by it at all?
I think looking back now, I think my color palette was mostly influenced by Garfield books.
Okay.
Weirdly,
That's awesome.
when I look back at them now, they're kind of all kind of pastely sort of
Yeah.
colors and stuff. I definitely did like take influence from all like the signs and stuff in Japan because I really love those. Like I've done like work in Japanese as well, like lettering work. I really like those. There's a lot, like you must have seen. There's a lot of like neon and stuff over there, so I quite like all that kind of thing. And there's lots of characters all over the place. Like every single company has a character. There's like some
Yeah.
kind of mascot for like everything in Japan. So yeah, I think that influenced a lot of my work.
Well, speaking of mascots and character and branding, I'm curious about yourself. What are your thoughts on personal branding, especially today in the whole creator economy? How important is it as artists, as illustrators, to actually build a brand around yourself?
It's definitely really important. I'm really bad at it myself. Like I can do branding for companies and stuff. I can't do my own brand, and it's a weird thing to think about. I think it's slightly easier when your work is like, I don't know the word, but like just more focused on one thing rather than, like, if you spread yourself out a lot, it's really hard to do branding for yourself. I
Yeah.
think if you're like a bit more specialist, like you're an illustrator that just does like one type of characters or something, it's really easy to kind of brand yourself. It's definitely good on social media now to do that sort of thing. Like I know like your Instagram is really well branded. You've got all the same kind of colors. You got like good thumbnails that you've figured out for things. That definitely comes through well. I think mine is, I find mine a lot harder because I work on a wide variety of stuff. Um, but yeah, I would recommend other people to do it, even if I don't.
I wonder if illustrators should do like a trade-off between each other. You do my branding, I'll do yours.
Good idea.
And
Yeah,
that way, that solves that problem. But
yeah,
like, what are your thoughts around like having to create content all the time now? And like, you can't just post a picture anymore. It's like
yeah.
video and YouTube and reels. And what's been your approach? And has it been overwhelming, or what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I found it really hard. I think a lot of people find it hard, especially if like your work is a bit more involved.
Mm,
I think if you can do things really quickly and you've got a good schedule going, you can probably kind of schedule things to like draw stuff and like make videos of that. But I think the videos I've made of me like working have taken like 2 or 3 times longer than doing the actual work. So it ends up, it's quite hard to kind of fit in sometimes. And I think, yeah, I feel like you have to like post like twice a day,
mm,
or like get really, really, I guess like making content as your main occupation rather than like doing
yeah.
illustration or design as your main occupation, and it can sort of fit your illustration into the content rather than the other way around. I think, yeah, it just depends whether you're willing to do that, I guess.
Yeah.
Companies do like to have like people to have like a follower and stuff now, like,
Mm.
to have like a brand to them, and I think you do well if you've got that.
Yeah, like especially last year, this year, I feel like I'm turning it more into a content creator than an actual illustrator. I'm like, I have to spend so much time doing all this, but at the same time, I'm like, this is sort of my investment plan for
Yeah,
for retirement, you know?
I think it suits some people though, doesn't it? You know,
Yeah,
like some people have fun making videos and kind of talking to camera and stuff. Like some other people, like a lot of illustrators are quite introverted,
yeah.
don't really like talking on camera, or like quite awkward at it. So yeah, I think that it suits certain people, it doesn't suit other people.
Mm, yeah. And for yourself, I saw on LinkedIn you're looking for a job now as a
Yeah.
designer within a company. And
Uh-huh.
so I'm curious, like what are the pros and cons of self-employed versus employed? What's making you kind of make the jump? Because usually it's the other way around where you're
Yeah.
in a company for ages and you're like, oh, I've had enough, I'm going to jump out. But you're going the other way. I've been freelancing for so long and I want to jump in. So, well,
Yeah,
what's
'cause so I enjoy doing a lot of different stuff. So like I said, I didn't start off doing illustration, and like illustration has kind of crept in as being like the main thing now. I like working on brands and doing designer stuff, and like you don't really get like trusted to do that as a single person. Like brands won't come to you and say like, "Oh, can you do loads of stuff for me? We want this whole like rebrand done for like a big company or something." They won't come to like. So yeah, I just kind of, I'd rather be working somewhere and kind of get my teeth into more stuff at the moment, I think. Uh,
mm,
the illustration doesn't take me like a long time at the moment.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've got like a lot of time in between projects doing like personal work and stuff. I find that hard to kind of fill it. So yeah, I'm looking for something full time now instead. I do know a few people have done a similar thing though, of sort of I guess that it's that being bored wouldn't be the word, but like you want a bit more variety sometimes than just kind of do it. I think when you do illustration, you need to do like a singular thing to kind of push that and like
Mm,
clients see what you're doing.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to going into an agency and like having colleagues and stuff like that. It's weird. It's weird being like stuck by yourself with this lot behind me for that's it. It's the only people I can talk to most of the time.
Yeah, I suppose there is that element of, company and the fact that you learn so much just from being around other creative people
Mhm.
and the ability to bounce off ideas and things. And I suppose it's almost like pursuing a layer of curiosity that maybe has been held back because to be in to establish yourself well as an illustrator, it's quite important to, almost be single-minded and create a very specific style around
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah, and I find that really hard
Mm,
because I've worked on such a big variety of things. I have to skip around all over the place all the time.
yeah,
Like also I have like ADHD as well, which kind of makes
yeah.
me jumping around everywhere. And so it's really hard for me to kind of stick to one thing. Like I'll be really interested in doing like character illustration for a little while. I'll do like loads and loads of it.
Mm,
And it's not like I'll get bored, but I'll see something else
yeah.
like playing with one ball and there's like a different colored ball in the background and you have to run for that suddenly. And then you play with that for a while. And then it's like really hard to kind of stick to one thing and like push out, like say like be a content creator and push out content and get like well known for doing like one type of thing. And I feel
Mm,
like working at an agency is a nice way to kind of bounce around projects quite a lot and then maybe like stick your illustration to kind of one or two smaller styles and like push that out rather than kind of bouncing all over the place all the time.
mm.
So yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to that sort of thing, being allowed to bounce around a little bit.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point there in the sense that, being a creator is hard enough, but being a diverse creator is probably tougher. And so like what are some tips on dealing with that? Has it been an inhibitor, or have you leaned into it and has it turned into sort of like almost your superpower in like like some people do, some people find it harder to do. So I'm just curious what it's been like for you.
It's been so like I've got autism and ADHD, so like it's a kind of double thing that sort of they fight against each other quite a lot. I
Yeah.
think there's quite a lot of creatives that are neurodiverse. I think because it pushes your thinking all over the place sometimes. So I think a lot of people end up kind of going into something creative. Um, I only got my ADHD diagnosis like late last year.
Okay.
Autism I'm kind of known for quite a while, but I think it has kind of inhibited me while I kind of didn't really know what it was. Like
Sure.
now I kind of know a bit more about it, and I've kind of uh, there's a lot of stuff on like Instagram and things now. A lot of people like talking about it more. And
Yeah.
companies are a lot more kind of open to letting people work how they would want to work. Like I can't sit at a desk and not move for
Hmm.
hours and hours and stick on like one thing really well. So, but I think a lot of companies now are realizing that you can use someone that kind of bounces around a lot and can like make a load of like weird ideas and then maybe like pull them back slightly rather than coming up with like really simple ideas and having to push them a little bit. You can just go
Yeah.
like out there and then kind of reel someone back in a little bit to something that's palatable and like usable. But I think now it's kind of good in a way. I can concentrate on things like really
Yeah.
hard a lot of the time, and yeah, it's good for like brainstorming and stuff. It's good and bad for working freelance and good and bad for working in an agency. But I think if you
Yeah.
figure out ways around it and you kind of work for the right people, they can like utilize you properly.
What do you think, or do you have any tips on time management? Because I think that's one area that is potentially a struggle because
Mm.
you can jump from idea to idea. And so have you created processes for yourself, or
Yeah.
systems for yourself to actually be like, okay, I'll do this, get this done in this amount of time, and then I can jump to this, or like what are some tips?
Yeah. Yeah, kind of. So like because so many ideas come out, what I end up doing is writing all the ideas down.
Okay.
Doesn't matter like how many you have. Like I'm not going to look at most of them, but I'll just write them down anyway. And then in the morning, rather than having like a to-do list that's like 300 items long, I'll pick like 5 things to do out of that. Like what kind of feels most important, because
Mm,
like with ADHD, it's really hard to like prioritize things.
yeah.
So you'll end up like having something on your list of that's really small and easy to do, or like something else that's really important, and you'll start off with the thing that's really pointless that you don't really need to be getting on with, like
Yeah.
like clean your computer screen or something. You've got like a deadline in 2 hours, but like you need to go off and clean your computer screen, and then you'll go off and clean something else, and then get distracted with something else. So I'll write like a few tasks down in the order that I need to do them, and try to kind of sit with those. And
Mm,
I've got a timer which like a lot of people use, which I set to like 30 or 60 minutes.
yeah.
I'll switch my phone like on silent for a little while, put the timer on, and like concentrate on something, and then at the end of that have like a treat. So like teaching a dog or something. So you'll do it and you'll have like a bit of chocolate or something like that, and
Yeah.
it gives you like a reward
Yeah.
doing something boring and sitting down and not concentrating. But yeah, the to-do list is the main thing, I think. But
I think,
not making it too long.
yeah. I think that's so important. I think I use that as well
Yeah,
to a degree. It's like it's so important to like prioritize what's the most important, what can have the most impact in the day,
yeah,
versus like all the other things that we need to get done. And then the second one is setting rewards for yourself. It's fantastic, because then you're like, okay, I get this done and I get my little reward, my coffee,
yeah.
my whatever it might be. And then the other thing was concentrated short bursts of concentrated time.
Mhm.
And I think overall we end up being much more effective when we have short bursts of concentrated time, and then a little break, and then you can always jump back to it. But
Yeah,
then at least you've given your brain the break it needs.
exactly. Yeah. And I think it works even if you put it down for like 10 minutes or something. If you're
Mm,
doing something like really boring, just a bit, because
like your
like yeah, I
taxes.
can't. Yeah, exactly. Like that sort of thing. If you sit down and do that for like 10 minutes, and then you can do 10 minutes later on as well, but like it just makes it easier, rather than like looking at the task and thinking like it's this massive evil thing that you have to
Mm,
do, and you don't want to tackle it, you don't want to look at it. It definitely helps me a lot to do
eh,
that thing. I think it's good. I mean, it's good for like anyone to do that, not just someone with ADHD that can't
mm.
sort their life out properly.
Yeah, I think it applies to everybody,
Yeah,
especially as a freelancer working for yourself. Time management's important, because there are so many personal projects that you can get distracted
yeah,
in, or like that brand new idea that's just sitting there. And so just curating your time is important. I'm also
yeah.
curious around, do you ever get obsessed with an idea and can't let it go, and so that kind of follows you along the
Yeah,
day? And
loads. Oh, all the time. Yeah, yeah. Like I'll get obsessed with like a color or like a shape or something, especially. And yeah, just the idea of doing something that I don't even know what it would be, but yeah, just the idea of doing one thing. And I pick like I've been drawing a lot of I started drawing like windows for like computer windows and like systems for that, and like taskbars and things. I got kind of a little bit obsessed with doing that. I was adding them to like everything I was making, and yeah, and then you kind of after a little while you're like, oh man, like most of my portfolio now has got like this stuff in it. I have to leave it alone. That's probably a good thing to set like a longer timer for, like a few
Hmm.
days or something, and say like change, change, stop it.
Well, I suppose it helps you kind of create your style then, like I find, because a lot of illustrators really struggle with, finding what is theirs.
Mm,
And maybe obsession is a way to say, hey, you're really interested in this,
yeah,
or maybe you have lots of obsessions, and then it's asking yourself, what do I really not like to do? And so all the things that I not like to do is not my style. So everything else equals my
Yeah.
style.
I've got a good tip for that one as well. So like,
Yeah.
because I do loads of different stuff,
Mm,
like I've found a good way of doing it is kind of printing all your work, like really small, like business card size, and then like sorting it into piles and saying like, oh, this kind of matches this, and this kind of matches this kind of thing. And
mm,
you end up seeing kind of which piles are more interesting, and then you can look through that pile and kind of, or like maybe two piles or three piles even, and it will look more coherent because you've kind of removed the other stuff.
yeah.
I also find that's a good way to like sort your portfolio out, is to kind of just print, like, or if you got like 100 pieces of work or whatever, just print all of them, chuck them on, whatever you want to print them on, black and white or whatever, it doesn't really matter, and
Yeah.
sort them into piles. And then, yeah, you can kind of just chuck away the piles that don't really match the rest of it. Because like you say, I think, yeah, a lot of illustrators, especially like starting out, because they haven't done like loads and loads and loads of work,
Mm,
struggle with their style, and they've probably been like experimenting a lot, and like they've got a lot of different work. But I think once you sort it into piles, you end up kind of seeing like patterns coming out of it a little bit.
yeah.
And like, oh, I've drawn a lot of this thing. I hate drawing this thing. I've only drawn like one like cat or something. So let's not bother with cats now. And like, yeah, I thought that definitely helped me in the past.
What do you have any other portfolio tips around that? Because I've seen that you've been able to collaborate with some quite high-end brands like Nike and Vans, Adobe, and I suppose creating a portfolio for an illustrator is one of the key ways to get eyeballs on you and your work and your ethos. Any ideas around that?
Yeah, I think so. For me, like, you shouldn't put anything on your portfolio that someone might put into like an internal presentation. So like, if you imagine someone like putting forward, say, like 4 illustrators for like some company they're working at, and they grab like one image for each illustrator to kind of have, when they're doing like a little presentation, they got it up on the screen, they're like, oh, we've got these 4 guys that we want
Mm,
to kind of push for this project, but they've grabbed something from your like portfolio that you don't really like,
yeah.
or that doesn't really represent you. And then you just imagining this like internal meeting, they're like pushing you on this like image of like work that you don't do anymore. And then they're like, no, we don't want this one. He's like, that's completely not what we're looking for. I think, yeah, you have to kind of imagine someone just grabbing like a random piece of work off your website that they like,
Mm,
and putting you forward for that. And like, they might then, even if you got the work, maybe they might contact you and say like, oh, we want you to do this. And you're like, oh, yeah, I don't draw cats anymore. Like, I'm not interested in that. So I think that's quite an important one. And just
mm,
cutting your portfolio down, like if it's not like massively coherent, especially if you're starting out, you don't have like loads of work in one style. I
yeah.
think it's better to like put up like 6 pieces of work that are in one style, rather than
Mm.
putting up like 20 or 30 and they're like, it's confusing. I mean, I say that, but like my own website just has loads of crap on it. But I think, yeah, but I'll email companies and specifically put a few bits of work
Mm.
together and like send that to them as like the style that I'd kind of like to do something with them. Um, so yeah, I don't follow my own advice, but maybe I'll my,
So just to sum up, it's don't put work that you don't want to get. So like
yeah,
if you don't like doing maps, don't put a map in your portfolio,
yeah,
even
exactly.
if it's done for a great client. Number two was quality over quantity. It's better to have 6 damn good pieces that are in line with your style than to have like 15 subpar pieces that are like
Yeah,
all over the place.
yeah, and I think especially when you're starting out, like if most companies will know that you're kind of just starting in your career and stuff, and they won't expect you to be able to send them like a portfolio of like 200 images in the same style. Um, I think it's generally kind of fine, and you can always like make work for the company that you're approaching, and kind of just make something,
Mm,
even if you take like a couple of days or so. If you think of it kind of like a job interview, And like you might tailor like your portfolio or your CV or something to a company, and like you could just tailor some work, like you're approaching Adobe or something, let's say, and you kind of make something that you think might match the project that you kind of want to get work in.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like that works a lot better than just sending them like 20 or 30 pieces that don't really match too well and letting them kind of figure it out.
Mm. Where you fit within their narrative and
Yeah,
how best to use it. So that's actually a very key tip there is if you want to work for a specific company, maybe produce some sample pieces that would match within the range of work that they're doing. That is
yeah,
still your style. And basically it's your spin on what you might do for them. And then
yeah,
that gives them the incentive. Oh, it makes their art directors' lives easy because they're like, look what this guy just did.
yeah,
You know, it's
exactly.
exactly what we're looking for.
And like they're busy, like they'll be getting
Yeah.
like emails from loads of people. And if you imagine like 20 people are emailing them with like their
Mm.
entire portfolio and they're just like clicking on these emails going, I don't want to look through that, can't be bothered. And then you're sending them like one piece saying like, I want to work with you on this project. This is how I think it would look. And they're like, oh yeah, that's really easy to pitch. They chuck it in their pitch document
Mm.
straight in.
Oh, and how has it been for you? Do you do a lot of pitching or like sending in your work cold emailing?
Yeah,
What's your
I wouldn't say
process?
like, yeah, not quite pitching, but I think like if you, I think it depends sort of what kind of work you want to get. But I think if you want to, a lot of brands now are like collaborating with people. So, you know, they want to get, they want to mention the artist the same amount as they kind of mentioned in the project.
Mm.
So I think if you're doing that sort of thing, it's really good to kind of maybe come up with ideas that they can use as well. And like not, you know, like not just emailing them, just saying like, oh, what have you got for me? And like let them come up with something, make it like really
Yeah.
easy for like the art director or something to email them with like an idea saying like, I thought this would be really fun to do with you. Like I've made a mock-up of what it might look like, and then
Mm.
they can just go into the meeting pretending it was like their idea. They don't have to work so much that morning. They can just sit back, have a drink, not worry about it.
Mm.
I think the key is just to make it really easy for people.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. And do you use what, LinkedIn or social media to reach out to these?
I used to use social media mostly, but I think like
Yeah.
most people have figured out that like Instagram and everything has just gone some kind of weird direction like the last
Yeah.
years. Um, LinkedIn is definitely like a massive thing now.
Mm.
You can connect with people a lot easier on that. I used to have like a lot. I mean, I still do have like a lot of like art directors, creative directors, and stuff, and agencies and things following me on Instagram. But I don't think your work is not being like pushed to anyone particularly
Yeah.
now. And they won't like seek people out. Like they'll just want to like scroll through their feed on like the train in the morning or something and find people. But like if you're not being shown to them, I think the best way, yeah, at the moment is LinkedIn
Mm.
and just kind of getting a little bit more like direct to people, asking if you can like send them an email and stuff. And yeah, that's what definitely worked out a lot better for me recently.
Yeah, I think it's quite an underrated platform.
Mm.
And creators are all obsessed with platforms like Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that. But if you think about it, all the businesses hang out at LinkedIn.
Yeah.
They're the ones who hire you, so maybe hang out where they hang out.
Yeah, I think it's good on like Instagram and TikTok and stuff if you want to kind of be like a content creator
Yeah, yeah,
and like make money out of collaborating with brands in that way. But yeah, if you just want to kind of work with companies, I think LinkedIn is much better. I used to have a terrible reputation. Like I deleted mine years and years ago because it was just yeah, it was just like business. It was really, really businessy. Like
mm.
now it's definitely like yeah, I would say like a bit more like Instagram and Facebook put together.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
still quite businessy, but you know, you can a lot of people just post their work up there and yeah, you get a lot of people in good positions kind of seeing your work.
And I feel like it's a lot easier to reach out to people and be like, hey, let's connect. We're
Yeah,
in the same business circles or same industry, because that's sort of almost expected.
yeah,
Whereas like you DM someone on an Instagram and they're like, who are you?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, like a lot of like people that you might want to work with on Instagram,
Yeah.
either the brands are run by like social media like people at the company and they
Mm.
won't bother replying to you because like that they're not they're not kind of authorized to kind of
Yeah.
give out email addresses to like email for work and stuff. Or yeah, you'll message someone and it will be like their personal account for like some art director, and they don't want to be bothered. They're like at home looking at like pictures of their friends and stuff, and they don't want to like deal with work.
Mm,
LinkedIn is definitely a lot more like expected that you'll just like message someone and say, "Hey, can I give you an email and send you some work quickly?"
yeah. And so what has been your process for your work? Like a brief comes in, what do you do? How do you go about creating the work that you have?
Yeah, a lot of mine is like really tight deadlines.
Okay.
So, like a brief will come in, and then it'll be like say a 2 week deadline or something. And by the time you've kind of emailed back and forth, like talking about money and
Yeah.
deadlines and what sort of stuff they want you to do, you've got like a week left. So I used to do sketches and stuff like if the deadline was decent, but like nowadays
Mm.
it's harder to do that. I might do like a really rough thing just to show a rough layout of where it goes, but I'll generally just start like digitally now and maybe just tell someone what I'm going to be doing rather than like showing them in a sketch. A lot of the work that comes in now is like like companies that will sort of let me kind of do my thing a little bit more.
Mm.
So I think they kind of see my work and they know my work properly. And so if I kind of explain to them I'm going to draw this kind of thing, they can sort of figure it out a bit more in their head. But if
You've
that
built
helps
a level
hit
of
deadlines
trust.
properly, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they sort of trust you with it, and they know that you do something. And mm,
I think that's like an important part is building that layer of trust, and you do that by ensuring that you're quite consistent with your quality and the type of content you create and the style you create,
yeah,
because those are all like risk factors, and the more you curate that, then when the client turns up, they're like, okay, yeah, yeah, he
yeah,
consistently provides this sort of thing. This is his sort of outlook on life, and I can trust that something along these lines is going to
yeah,
turn up if I hire him.
exactly. Yeah, I think that's the important thing about kind of curating your work and stuff. Is
Yeah.
it's easy for a brand to like look at it and sort of imagine what you might be doing for them, even if you haven't got the exact same work. But I will get people emailing me quite often and show me something I've done in the past or like personal work and say like
Mm.
basically want exactly that, but for our brand, because it's really easy for them to if they've got like a deadline of like a week or so, it's easy
Yeah.
to come to you and say like, just can you recreate that but with a different looking character and different words
Mm.
on it, and that's what we want.
Nice. So like a lot of it's just working out the license then.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely easier if you have like an agent, because you don't
Mm.
have to, I think by yourself you have to play like good cop and bad cop at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit harder. I think if you have an be the bad cop, and like the companies are kind of more used to it. It's sort of a
Yeah.
business thing, and you're
Yeah.
like a separate thing. You don't have to worry about it so much. Yeah, when you're by yourself, it is a little bit harder. You do feel a little bit rude sometimes, kind of quoting people and like trying to negotiate and everything, but like it normally works out fine.
So do you have an agent or
Oh,
have
I
you?
did for like a tiny while, like a few
Okay.
years ago. Like that. I work by myself, so I have to do all the
Yeah,
good
you are the
well,
good bad cop.
negotiating, chasing up contracts and payments and all that.
And what do you think are the pros and cons of having an agent or not having an agent, seeing as you've had one and you've chosen not to go ahead with it? Because a lot of illustrators I find are obsessed with getting an agent
Yeah,
because they think I get an agent and my life is going to be completely different, but you know,
yeah. I'm still open to having an agent, but
yeah.
like it has to be like the right fit for you. Like it has to be
Mm,
someone who I think can get you the work that you want, and also
yeah.
doesn't have like other people on their books that are similar to you.
Yes.
Or even people that are like slightly similar but maybe are doing a lot better than you are, because then when a company comes in, or they've got like a bigger name, because if a company comes in, they'll see that name and they'll just be, oh yeah, we want that person,
Yeah.
and then you won't really get a lot out of it. um I think like working by yourself is always good, because you like agents obviously like take a cut of the fee and stuff, so if
Mm,
you're able to contact companies and get the work, like you're good at chatting to people and like getting in with everyone, I think it's good to go by yourself. I think like an agent is really good because they do have like contacts. Like if you want to work for Google, who are you going to email? You
Yeah.
can't just email like hi@google.com and hope for the best, can you? Like, but obviously, like an agent will know someone at Google who's hiring illustrators all the
Mm,
time, and they'll go through them to do all the work because they kind of trust them, and there's kind of legal implications to it. Like if you don't do your deadline on time, they can get legal with the agents. So like,
mm,
it's kind of a bit of an easier process for them in a way. Because I've worked with a few big companies before that have been using like say 5 or 6 illustrators at the same time for a project, and I've been the only one that's hit the deadline, and I imagine it kind of gets quite frustrating for them
yeah,
dealing
yeah.
with that type of thing. If you're dealing like through an agent, you can probably get bigger projects because the agent is managing your time and keeping you on track and stuff. I think it's
It,
hard.
it's
It's hard for people to do that by themselves. It's not that people are bad at it or don't want to hit a deadline. It's sometimes you get a bit like in your own brain and you don't know where you're going with things.
it's almost like a risk factor again for larger companies. They're like, we're gonna be putting out this much money and also the larger impact of the campaign. And so
Yeah,
having
yeah,
an agent is almost like, okay, this is my insurance policy, as
yeah,
it
yeah,
were, for the illustration. But at the same time, if you can learn to negotiate well, if you consistently meet your deadlines, then you can do all of that yourself
yeah,
to a level. Like for myself personally, I had an agent for a very short time in commercial illustration, and then
mm,
that didn't really work out because again there was too many illustrators within that
yeah,
agency, and it just nothing was really moving forward. But now I have an agent, a literary agent, which for me is super important because I don't really have
yeah,
contacts within that world at all. And it's a completely different uh game compared to advertisement and art directors and creative directors.
yeah,
So for me that's super helpful, and my agents being amazing really helped with those sorts of things. But I started off with getting contracts where I negotiated them myself, and then having the agent was like super helpful because I was
yeah.
like, I don't have to deal with that.
I could definitely see that being like a lot more useful. Like if you're like an author, like you are, and you make your own books and stuff. I think that's really important because like it's hard to get like a book taken up by someone otherwise. I think if you got
Yeah.
an agent, they can talk you up properly, and they'll know how to make your work like not more commercial. Like you can still keep it like true to yourself, but they'll know what targets you need to hit to be able to get it in the shops properly. Because I've done like I think 4 books now,
Okay.
but all self-published, so they've been like really
Yeah.
short
Yeah.
runs. I did contact like publishers and stuff trying to get like interest, but like it's hard to get heard in that way. So I can see
Mm,
like having an agent for that side being like mega useful. I feel like probably a lot more useful than the illustration side. I feel like that's something you can just kind of muddle through and just email loads of people about.
yeah. 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 No, 100%. Like, because like you, I started off self-published, and then that sort of attracted publishers for me, and then I got a couple of deals. Now, if I want to go to the next level, I think an agent's super important
Yeah,
because they garner those relationships really well, and I think that's part of the journey of learning. And then it was really interesting. I was thinking about this a lot. Publishing in itself is such a strange little world, right? Because we as artists were just like, here's my book, make my book a thing, and we forget to think of it like it's a business. And then I think publishers almost like they're always making bets, you know? And
uh,
so instead of stocks, they're betting on artists. And so like each artist is the bet that they make. And is this stock gonna make profit or not? And
Yeah.
so that's what the book is. It's like, is this author a good bet, and will this story then give us the returns we need?
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? Yeah, it's completely different because like I guess if you're doing like commercial illustration,
Yeah.
they kind of know what campaigns are going to work for them and what things have worked in the past. And like, yeah, I guess with books, like even if something's worked in the past, there's no guarantee that anyone's going to buy something that's kind of similar.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a big weird thing having to like to kind of bet on you and like put loads because they have to put a lot of money and effort into it, and especially like yeah, if you're not like designing your own books, have to get like someone to come in and design it, someone
Mm.
to print it, like get it in all the shops and everything. It's like I imagine it's like well, from printing my own, it's like expensive enough anyway. If I imagine if they're printing like a lot more copies, like I've only done like 50 or 100 at a time
Yeah, yeah.
generally. If they're printing like thousands and thousands, I don't know how many they print, but like
Probably a couple of thousand to uh make sure that the costs are low, because
yeah,
they'll use offset printing and stuff. So then you have to have those things cut out, and less than
stored
a
somewhere.
couple of thousand isn't really worth doing for them.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a weird old thing. Yeah, I definitely say that's a good agent thing. And like children's books and stuff is like a whole different world. Is like I don't know a lot about that side of things either. I know that's like it may as well just be a whole different industry to like commercial illustration.
Yeah, it totally is. It's got its own little niche as well. So you
Mm.
have to be a part of that community. And again, I find with creativity, it's almost like there's all these like insular communities that,
Yeah,
you have to get to know the people. It's all relational. So like the the better you get at building relationships, the more likely you are to be
yeah.
hired to do something.
I think that's quite hard for a lot of illustrators. Like, because I found that hard. Like, with my like autism has made that hard for me. Kind of like, I have a lot of problems like socially and kind of knowing what to say to people and what not to say to people. So that's made that hard over the years. Like, you can learn it a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think a lot of illustrators kind of struggle with that side, whether it's like that kind of thing, or like they're just kind of introverts and they just don't really
Mm,
want to go out and sell themselves so much. It's
yeah.
definitely people who are like a lot more confident and get a lot more work. I definitely see like that's one of the things to work on, like alongside your portfolio, is just confidence, 100%.
I feel like that's something you can build though. Like for
Oh yeah,
myself,
yeah.
I'm an introvert as well by nature, but I
Mm.
kind of almost like unlearned a lot of the things that are naturally. But then it's also like learning to know, okay, there'll be moments where I just need to go into my cocoon and, just watch Netflix and chill
Yeah,
or something. And so you create these like systems for yourself. So you're like, okay, high energy for this amount of time, and then I can like hibernate and
yeah, exactly.
recover
Yeah,
and all those things
yeah,
that
like
introverts
you,
need.
you don't need to be like on it
Yeah.
100% all the time. Yeah, it's definitely something you can learn. Like I've gone through that over the years. It's just you just need to kind of you need to be prepared to be like awkward and embarrassed a little bit, like not worried about it, and just I also find that like when I've seen people doing talks that are obviously not massively confident,
Mm.
I've liked that talk a lot more when someone's like really polished and comes up on stage and they're like real, like, just a real like smooth. I kind of prefer the person that kind of fumbles around a little bit and doesn't really know what to say. I feel like it's really authentic and like so yeah, so I feel like a tip to people would be like, if even if you feel like embarrassed and you feel like you sound silly or like you're not doing a very good job, I feel like there's a lot of people who relate to that and
Mm.
find that really interesting. There's a lot of people who prefer the person doing the talk who's like real smooth and polished, but obviously like a load of other people who'll be watching and going like, oh, I wish I could go up on stage. Like that's exactly how I'd speak on stage, and like it's probably quite inspiring to people. I feel like that's the whole reason a lot of people like watch YouTube stars and stuff now is because they're a bit more normal and relatable rather than
Mm.
watching someone like presenting a TV show who like you feel like yeah, who are they? Because someone on YouTube is kind of a bit more like a friend of yours who you're kind of watching them. um yeah, I feel like it's good to do that, just not worry about it too much, and just be prepared to feel embarrassed, go home, get into bed, not come out for 2 days.
I think it's almost like finding the middle ground between the two of like not being like super polished so that you're like unrelatable, but at
Yeah,
the same time not being so stumbling that it distracts from what the potential of what you have to say and the impact of what you have to say. It's
yeah,
almost like the middle ground between the two, and finding the balancing act of that.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and speaking of learning, what is one piece of advice that you would maybe give yourself or a young illustrator who is coming up in the world?
um oh, that's a good question. I would say like, not don't worry about your qualifications and stuff.
Mm,
And that doesn't just mean like qualifications you got from studying. It just means like, even if you don't think you've got like the experience to approach like a brand and stuff, just don't give a crap about it. Just approach them anyway, and just like, if your work is good, people will kind of employ you for it. Or, like, if you like self-studied, or you haven't been to university, or like you don't even have like high school qualifications or anything, don't worry about that. If you like feel like you're overqualified for the job, don't worry about that either. And just, I guess, like, go for things if you think you can do them,
mm,
and just don't worry about, yeah, like, it doesn't matter like if you're class or race or like what, and anything, like, just don't give a crap about any of that, and just approach people anyway.
yeah. So like almost like be confident in your abilities and just go for
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So I
And
think I've seen a lot of people like that who are kind of worried that they're maybe not good enough, or not established enough, or
mm,
maybe they feel like they're too established to work with like a smaller brand, and like they'll be
yeah.
worried. Just, yeah, just go for it anyway, I think.
Do you think that has something to do with a layer of imposter syndrome? And have you ever faced that? And how did you deal with that if you
Oh
did?
yeah, loads. Face that all the time. But I think the way to do it is like, not thinking about things too much, and then writing an email and
Mm,
just sending it,
yeah,
and forgetting about it, and just like, write it down so you can maybe chase it up at some point.
yeah,
Yeah, just think, because like, I've dealt with that loads. Even now, I'll think like, oh, what can I do? What can I do for this company that will kind of help them out? And you're like, I haven't really done any work like that before, so like, I'm not really sure how I could kind of pitch this to them. I
mm,
think if you don't pitch it to them, you like, they're definitely not going to get back to you. They're not going to just email you out of nowhere. So yeah, I think just not worrying about it, not worry about it, because it's impossible to not worry about something if you are
yeah,
worried about it. But just think like, someone else who's like worse than you but has more confidence is emailing that same company like today, and
yeah,
like,
yeah,
they might get the work that you're probably more suited for. So just email anyway and see what happens. And if the company doesn't want you, they won't pay you for it.
yeah,
But
yeah.
if they make the decision that your work is good enough, then they'll pay you for it. So let them make the decision, I guess.
I suppose I like to ask myself the question, what's the worst that's gonna happen? You
Yeah.
know, like the world's not gonna explode. You
That
know,
no
like
one no one's gonna send people to your house to like
yeah,
beat you up because you emailed them.
yeah, like the worst is, nobody replies or
Exactly, yeah.
the job doesn't go forward. And keeping that in mind and taking yourself a little lightly, so not so seriously, then the
I would say,
possibilities are there.
another thing to go with that is to just chase people up,
Mm,
because if you just think of like, because I always used to think if someone didn't reply to me, it's because they weren't interested. But actually, like, there's been loads and loads of times where I've had an email sitting in my inbox, and I've been like, I'll reply to that tomorrow, and then 3 days later, oh, I'll reply to that tomorrow, and then it gets to like a week or 2 weeks, and you're like, oh, this has been too long. I'm gonna look really weird. It's gonna be more polite if I just ignore it than if I
yeah,
reply. But if someone chases it up, you can always, like, if you chase up like an art director, they can always be like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't see this. It
yeah,
kind of gives them an out, like replying back to you in a polite way. And I feel like it's kind of polite anyway to reply to people. So like if
Mm,
someone doesn't reply to you, like it's probably not because they're ignoring you. They're probably just got really busy, or you emailed
yeah,
them on Monday morning and they had some really annoying meeting to go to, and then there's 300 emails after that meeting and they just forgot about people's.
yeah.
So yeah, I just say like chase people up, email them, forget about it until you have to chase them up. Set like a reminder or something.
That's very sound advice. I love it. And just to end things, I like to end with this question: what does the word fruitful mean to you?
Fruitful. Um, yeah, just having a lot of something. I think
Okay.
something that like a plant that's fruitful, just a lot of fruit comes out of it. So I would
Mm.
say like if you're doing a lot of work and you're being productive, I think that's fruitful. Even
Mm.
if you're not physically doing work, even if you're just like lying in bed
Yeah.
and you're thinking of ideas and just letting your mind go somewhere, or you're looking on Instagram and just scrolling through other people's work, I think that's still fruitful. Just being productive in kind of some kind of way, I think.
Wow. Yeah. Being productive, I like it. I love hearing the answer to this because every single guest gives me a completely different answer and it's just the same word. So it's fantastic. Anyway, thank you so much, Tim. Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate your time and all the insights you shared. And
Thanks
hey,
for asking.
oh, sorry, go for it.
No, thanks for asking me on. That's all. So my ADHD has me like interrupting people all the time. Like,
No worries, no worries. Hey, and thank you all for listening to this episode of The Fruitful Life. I hope you walk away with some nuggets of wisdom from Tim. If you did, please do me a favor and leave a rating and a comment to tell me what you think of this show. Also, consider telling a friend who might like it. As always, be true, be you, stay fruitful.